Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They don't fail because they lack resources. They fail for a much simpler reason. They wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait for fear to leave. But here's the truth: action doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows action. Most people wait for motivation to arrive like a visitor knocking at the door. But action begins the moment you accept responsibility. Responsibility is not a burden. It is a privilege. The day you fully accept that your life, your progress, and your results are in your hands is the day momentum is born. Until then, you remain stuck, waiting on luck, timing, other people, or circumstances to change. But nothing changes until you do. When you take responsibility, excuses lose their power. You stop saying, "If only this were different," or "If only someone helped me." Instead, you begin asking a far more productive question. What can I do right now? That question is dangerous in the best way because it forces movement. Responsibility pushes you out of comfort and into control. And control, even when it's uncomfortable, is far better than helplessness. Many people misunderstand responsibility. They think it means self-blame, regret, or harsh judgment. Responsibility simply means ownership. Ownership of your habits, ownership of your time, ownership of your attitude. When you own these things, you gain the power to change them, and power creates energy. Energy creates motion. Motion creates results. The moment you stop blaming the past, the economy, your upbringing, or other people, your mind clears. Blame drains strength. Responsibility restores it. You may not have caused everything that happened to you, but you are responsible for what you do next. That understanding alone can force you into action when motivation is nowhere to be found. Responsibility also sharpens discipline. When you see yourself as the one in charge, you stop negotiating with laziness. You don't wait to feel like it. You do what needs to be done because it's your duty to your future. Discipline is easier when you respect yourself enough to keep your word to yourself. And responsibility is the foundation of self-respect. Action becomes simpler when responsibility is clear. Instead of being overwhelmed by the entire journey, you focus on your role today. What is your responsibility right now? Not tomorrow. Not next year. Today? Is it to learn? To practice? To show up? To try again? When you narrow your focus to your responsibility in the present moment, action becomes unavoidable. There is also something powerful that happens internally. When you accept responsibility, your identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstances, but as a creator of outcomes. And creators act. They don't wait. They don't complain. They adjust and move forward. That identity shift alone can force action, even on difficult days. Responsibility creates momentum, because every action you take reinforces the belief that you are capable. Each small step proves to your mind that you are not stuck. Momentum doesn't come from giant breakthroughs. It comes from small acts of ownership repeated daily. Make a call you've been avoiding. Start the task you've been postponing. Finish what you promised yourself you would finish. Each act strengthens the next one. The greatest reward of responsibility is freedom. When you accept responsibility, you are no longer dependent on perfect conditions. You act in imperfect conditions. You grow in uncomfortable moments. You build confidence not from thinking, but from doing. And once you experience the freedom that comes from taking charge, it becomes hard to go back to waiting. If you want to force yourself to take action, don't wait for courage, confidence, or clarity to magically appear. Start with responsibility. Say, "This is mine to handle." That single decision carries weight. It wakes you up. It pushes you forward. And once you move, even slightly, momentum takes over. Action begins the moment responsibility is accepted. And once momentum starts, even fear steps aside. Do you like this personality? ChatGPT can make mistakes? Check important info. Fear has stopped more dreams than failure ever could, and most of that fear is exaggerated by inaction. The longer you delay, the bigger the task appears. The mind has a way of turning hesitation into monsters. But small disciplines have a remarkable power. They shrink fear down to its proper size. You don't defeat fear by fighting in your head. You defeat it by moving your feet. Big goals often intimidate because they demand big courage all at once. But courage is not a single heroic act. It is a collection of small, disciplined decisions repeated daily. When you force yourself to take a small action, you interrupt the cycle of fear. Fear thrives on stillness. The moment you act, even in a minor way, fear begins to lose its grip. Small disciplines are simple actions done consistently. They may seem insignificant at first, but they carry great weight over time. Reading 10 minutes a day, waking up 30 minutes earlier, making one call, writing one page. These actions don't overwhelm the mind, yet they train it. They teach your mind that progress is possible and manageable. And once the mind believes progress is possible, action becomes easier. Fear often disguises itself as procrastination. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow when you feel more prepared, more confident, more ready. But readiness is built through action, not before it. Small disciplines create readiness. Each time you keep a small promise to yourself, you build trust within. And self-trust is the foundation of courage. Consider how fear operates. It asks, what if you fail? Small discipline responds, then I'll learn. Fear asks, what if you look foolish? Discipline replies, I'll improve. Fear lives in imagined futures, but discipline lives in the present moment. And the present moment is the only place where action is possible. Another advantage of small disciplines is that they reduce emotional resistance. Massive goals can trigger anxiety because they feel heavy. Small actions feel light. You don't have to convince yourself to change your life today. You only have to convince yourself to take one step. That step may not be impressive to others, but it is powerful to you. Progress measured privately is often the most meaningful. Small disciplines also create identity change. When you act daily, even in small ways, you begin to see yourself differently. You no longer say, I'm someone who wants to improve, but I'm someone who shows up. Identity drives behavior. Once you see yourself as a person of action, hesitation fades naturally. Fear weakens when it is confronted repeatedly in small doses. Each disciplined action is a controlled exposure to discomfort. Over time, discomfort becomes familiar, and familiarity reduces fear. What once felt intimidating becomes routine. This is how confidence is built, not by waiting, but by practicing courage in small, manageable forms. The mistake many people make is underestimating the power of consistency. They search for dramatic breakthroughs, ignoring the quiet strength of daily effort. But consistency turns small actions into unstoppable force. What you do every day matters more than what you do occasionally. Small disciplines, practiced faithfully, compound into extraordinary results. When you feel stuck, don't ask yourself, what is the biggest thing I can do? Ask instead, what is the smallest discipline I can practice today? That question removes pressure and invites movement. Movement creates momentum, and momentum carries you forward when motivation runs low. Fear may never disappear completely, but it doesn't have to control you. Small disciplines place you back in charge. They remind you that progress is not about being fearless. It's about being faithful to small actions. Do the simple things daily. Do them even when you don't feel like it. Over time, fear shrinks, confidence grows, and action becomes your natural response. Procrastination is rarely about laziness. It is usually about confusion. When the mind is unclear, the body hesitates. You may want success, growth, or change, but if your direction is vague, your actions will be weak. Clarity is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is one of the strongest forces that can push you into action when motivation is low. A vague desire sounds like this: I want to do better, or I want to be successful. Those statements sound positive, but they don't demand movement. The mind doesn't know where to go, so it stays still. Clarity, on the other hand, gives your mind a target. And when the mind has a target, it begins to organize energy around it. Action becomes more natural because direction is defined. Clarity begins with decision. Indecision drains energy faster than hard work. When you keep all options open, you feel safe, but you remain stuck. Progress requires commitment. Decide what you want, even if the decision isn't perfect. A clear, imperfect plan is more powerful than a perfect plan that never begins. Once you decide, you free yourself from endless mental debate. When clarity is missing, tasks feel heavier than they actually are. The mind imagines complexity because it lacks structure. But once you define the next step, the weight lifts. You don't need to map the entire journey. You only need to identify the next action that moves you forward. Clarity at the level of the next step is enough to defeat procrastination. Another reason clarity forces action is that it removes emotional excuses. When your goal is clear and meaningful, it becomes harder to justify delay. You know why you must act. Purpose fuels discipline. Without a clear why, even simple tasks feel difficult. With a strong why, even difficult tasks feel worthwhile. Clarity also brings focus, and focus is a form of energy. Scattered attention produces scattered effort. When you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing well. But when you narrow your focus, your energy concentrates. That concentration creates urgency. You stop drifting and start moving with intention. One powerful way to gain clarity is to write things down. Thoughts in the mind are often messy and emotional. Thoughts on paper become structured and practical. When you write your goals, your priorities, and your next actions, you turn ideas into instructions. Instructions are easier to follow than vague thoughts. Clarity also requires honesty. You must be honest about what matters to you and what doesn't. Many people procrastinate because they are chasing goals that don't truly belong to them. When your goals are borrowed, action feels forced. When your goals are aligned with your values, action feels natural. Honesty brings alignment, and alignment fuels momentum. Another important aspect of clarity is knowing what not to do. Action is not only about movement, it is about direction. Saying no to distractions is as important as saying yes to opportunities. When you remove unnecessary commitments, you create space for meaningful action. Less confusion means more progress. Clarity grows through action as well. You don't need perfect understanding before you start. Often, clarity comes after you begin. Action reveals what thinking alone cannot. Each step teaches you something new, refining your direction. Waiting for complete clarity keeps you stuck. Acting on partial clarity moves you forward. If you want to force yourself to take action, don't rely on willpower alone. Create clarity. Decide what you want. Define why it matters. Identify the next simple step. Remove distractions. When clarity is present, procrastination has no place to hide. A clear mind moves forward. An unclear mind stands still. Choose clarity, and action will follow naturally. Many people believe that belief comes first and action comes second. They think once they feel confident enough, once they truly believe in themselves, then they will finally move. This idea sounds comforting, but it quietly keeps people stuck for years. The truth works in the opposite direction. Action is what creates belief. You do not act because you believe because you act. Belief is not something you wait for, it is something you build, and it is built through experience. The mind trusts what it sees repeatedly. When you take action, even imperfect action, you give your mind evidence. Evidence is far more powerful than positive thinking. Each small action says, "I can do this," and the mind begins to accept it as truth. Waiting for belief is dangerous because belief grows only after movement begins. If you demand confidence before action, you place yourself in a loop with no exit. Confidence requires proof, and proof requires action. Someone must move first, and that someone is you. Action is the spark that starts the fire of belief. Consider how belief develops in any skill. No one believes they are skilled before they practice. The belief grows with repetition. The same principle applies to discipline, courage, and productivity. You do not suddenly wake up believing you are disciplined. You become disciplined by doing disciplined acts. Belief follows behavior. Action also quiets self-doubt. Doubt feeds on imagination, not reality. When you are inactive, your mind has time to create stories of failure, embarrassment, and regret. But when you act, reality replaces imagination. You discover that most fears are exaggerated and most challenges are manageable. Action replaces doubt with experience, and experience strengthens belief. Another powerful aspect of action is that it shifts your identity. Each time you take action, you cast a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One action may seem small, but repeated actions form a pattern. Patterns become identity. Once you see yourself as a person who acts, belief becomes automatic. You no longer question whether you can move forward. You simply do. Action does not need to be dramatic to be effective. Small actions are often more powerful because they are sustainable. Sending the email, making the call. Practicing for 10 minutes. These acts may not feel heroic, but they build momentum. Momentum strengthens belief because progress becomes visible. Visible progress convinces the mind that effort is worthwhile. It is important to understand that belief built through action is stable. Emotional belief rises and falls with mood, but experiential belief lasts. When belief is rooted in what you have done, not what you hope, it becomes resilient. You trust yourself because you have proof of follow-through, not because you feel inspired. Many people try to think their way into a new life. They read, plan, and visualize hoping belief will appear. But thinking alone rarely changes behavior. Behavior changes belief. Movement changes mindset. When you act, even while unsure, the mind adjusts to support the action you have already taken. This is how internal change truly happens. There will be days when belief feels weak. On those days, action becomes even more important. Action carries you through moments when emotion fails. You act not because you feel strong, but because action itself will make you stronger. Over time, you learn to trust the process. Act first, believe later. If you want to force yourself to take action, stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a result, not a requirement. Start where you are, with what you have, and take the next step. Let action be your teacher. Let experience shape your confidence. Belief is not the cause of action, it is the reward. Act first, and belief will grow naturally in its wake. Your life is not shaped by what you do once in a while, it is shaped by what you accept as normal. Standards are the invisible rules you live by. They determine what you tolerate, what you expect from yourself, and how you respond when things get difficult. If you want to force yourself to take action, you must raise your daily standards, because behavior always rises or falls to the level of what you demand of yourself. Many people rely on motivation to act, but motivation is unreliable. Standards are dependable. When your standards are low, you negotiate with excuses. When your standards are high, excuses no longer fit. You don't ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" You ask, "Is this the kind of person I've decided to be?" That question alone can force action on days when enthusiasm is absent. Daily standards begin with non-negotiables. These are actions you perform regardless of mood, weather, or circumstances. Non-negotiables remove decision fatigue. When something is a standard, it no longer requires debate. You act because it is who you are. This is how discipline becomes automatic rather than exhausting. Standards are not about perfection. They are about consistency. You don't need to do everything perfectly, but you must do something consistently. A small action done every day is more powerful than a massive effort done occasionally. Daily standards turn effort into rhythm, and rhythm sustains progress over time. One reason people struggle to act is because they set goals without setting standards. Goals are outcomes, standards are behaviors. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. When you define clear daily behaviors, progress becomes predictable. Action becomes routine rather than heroic. Standards also shape self-image. When you repeatedly meet your own expectations, self-respect grows. Self-respect makes action easier because you don't want to disappoint yourself. Each day you meet your standard, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. Identity-driven action is far more powerful than emotion-driven action. Another important aspect of standards is what you refuse to tolerate. If you tolerate distraction, inconsistency, or self-neglect, those behaviors will continue. What you allow continues. Raising standards means drawing clear lines. You decide what no longer has a place in your life. This decision alone can create immediate change. Daily standards must be realistic yet demanding. If they are too easy, they won't stretch you. If they are too extreme, they won't last. The right standard challenges you while remaining achievable. It encourages progress without inviting burnout. Sustainability is the true measure of a good standard. Standards also provide structure, and structure creates freedom. When you know what is expected of you each day, you waste less energy deciding. You act with clarity and purpose. Structure does not limit creativity, it supports it. It creates a stable foundation on which growth can occur. Over time, standards compound. What feels difficult at first becomes normal. What was once a struggle becomes habit. This is how ordinary actions lead to extraordinary results. The transformation is gradual, but it is powerful. Small daily standards, honored consistently, reshape your future. If you want to force yourself to take action, stop relying on fleeting motivation. Decide who you are and what you stand for. Set daily standards that reflect that decision. Then live by them, especially on the days when you don't feel like it. Your future will not be determined by a single burst of effort, but by the standards you live by every day. Raise them, honor them, and watch your actions align with the life you want to create. Finally, remember this: success is not a single act of bravery. It's a series of ordinary actions done consistently. What you do daily matters more than what you do occasionally. Don't wait for inspiration. Schedule your disciplines. Act when it's inconvenient. Act when it's uncomfortable. Act when no one is watching. Because one day, you'll look back and realize that the moment everything changed was not when you felt ready, but when you decided to move anyway.